One of the greatest things that microbrands has brought to us as watch enthusiasts is amazing and interesting designs, especially the dials. And I'm really enjoying both microbrands and interesting dials. And one brand that is doing this and has done this for some time is Signum. Hello, you're watching James. My name's James, you're watching me, and I am talking about watches. And this watch from Signum, the design of the dial, I'm not sure if it's brilliant or bonkers, but whether it's brilliant or bonkers or a combination of both, I don't care because I just happen to like it. I think this is a really interesting and completely different design to any other watch that I've seen, and it is a watch that I've wanted to get hands-on with a while because it is just so different. And it's been great to be able to now get hands-on with not just one version of it, but both versions in the bronze case. And I particularly like bronze cases recently. There's something about them that I enjoy, and working in conjunction with this dial, I think it works very well. Now, unfortunately, I don't get to keep these watches. These have just been lent to me by the brand, but thank you so much for the opportunity to get hands-on with this one. So it is really nice to be able to have some hands-on experience with it and then share it with you guys too. But I will leave a link just directly to the Signum website in the description of this video if you do want to check them out in a little bit more detail. What I also like about this cathedral dial variation of the Signum Cuda watches is that it is available in two different variations, both in blue and brown. And they are also powered by one of my favorite movements, that high beat Miyota 9015. Something that I've really been drawn towards recently, and what I'm really happy that is being featured in more and more watches. But it's also nice to see that these ones come with 200 meters of water resistance. They are both covered by a sapphire crystal, and this company gives you 2 years of warranty with their watches. And both of them are priced at $499 US. And for $499 US, there's a lot of watch for that money. And there's a lot to talk about even beyond those interesting dials. But of course, if you're looking to buy one of these watches, that dial is going to be a big part of the reasoning. So let's start by looking at that first. And of course, when you look at these watches and you know that this watch is called the Cathedral, that is then replicated on this dial. And it is all about the dial of this watch because it looks like a stained glass window from a cathedral. Now, I have to say, when I look at this, when I look at pictures of this, when I wear these watches, it does appear to have a 3D element to it. However, there is no 3D element to it. It is almost an illusion just because of the complexity of the pattern that is on the dial. It is a printed dial, which I would normally say would detract from the experience of the watch, but in this particular instance, it does not detract from it at all. In fact, it just looks absolutely amazing. But what is really surprising about this watch, with this complex style, with this complexity of design elements of this cathedral style printing on the dial, is just how legible this watch actually is. I would normally think, again, this is going to detract from the legibility since there is so much to see on the dial of this watch, yet it remains super legible. And this is achieved through these very bold applied markers, those silver surrounded lume filled larger markers, and those complementary silver brushed hands with those interesting pattern as well, which I think also reflects a cathedral style element. But the quantity of the lume within the hands adds to that legibility. It is easy to read the time both in the daylight because of the sheer amount of white lume standing out against the color of the dial. But when you turn the lights off, these watches just glow. In fact, it's probably some of the strongest lume that I've seen on any watch. The other couple of elements that are on this dial is the applied logo just under the 12 and that applied surround to the date window down there at the 6 with a little bit of text saying automatic 200 meters. Now I find the logo disappears a little bit. I find the date window also disappears a little bit, and I think it's good in regards to the date window because it then becomes part of that dial design rather than feeling like it's been added on. So it's a really cool, cohesive, interesting, complex design, yet still has a heap of legibility. That second hand has a little bit of a flash of color on the end of it too, which then also helps assist, especially as it overlaps that inner sloped chapter ring, which appears to be like a silvery pearl style color with a little bit of markings of black on it, denoting those minute markers. The crystal almost disappears, although when you look on an angle, you can see that it is slightly domed, but it is only single dome. So there is a little bit of distortion at extreme angles. However, you don't really notice that distortion when you look at the watch in any other circumstance other than an extreme angle. But what then really surprises me, and what actually worried me a little bit when I first saw pictures and descriptions of this watch, was that bezel insert, because it has a mother of pearl bezel insert, which I don't think I've ever seen before. And I was a little bit concerned about it because, well, I thought perhaps it might be a little bit too much. There's already so much to the design of this watch. I thought perhaps it might shine and be a little bit blingy perhaps, but as it's turned out, it's a feature that I particularly like, because when you're inside or in a more shaded environment, it is very subtle. You don't really notice any reflective nature of that mother of pearl, but then when the light does hit it, it almost shines and it shimmers as you move the watch from side to side. So it becomes a surprise added element that is not always immediately obvious. And I'm really glad that that's how it has turned out with this particular bezel insert, because if it was shining all the time, perhaps it might be too much, but that is certainly not how this one has turned out. But another surprise beyond that mother of pearl bezel insert is the dimensions, or in fact, how the dimensions of this watch translates to an on-wrist experience, because this is a reasonable sized dive style watch, because the case is 42 millimeters. It has a thickness or a height of 13.3 millimeters, a lug to lug of 49.7 millimeters, a lug width of 22, and an overall weight on these leather straps that they come with of 117 grams. Now on my wrist, my 17 centimeter wrist, this translates very well. It fits and curves down and fits me nicely. But what's rather interesting, and what I don't normally get to understand about watch sizes, is I recently had a friend with me who tried this on, who is a fellow watch enthusiast that loves watches, in particular loves microbrand watches, and he has a smaller wrist, a 6.4 inch wrist, which is smaller than mine, and yet it fit him really nicely too. In fact, he liked it so much and how it fit onto his wrist that he's considering getting one of these into his own collection. But when you then look obviously at the case, and I think that is part of the reason why it translates nicely onto a wrist, is that curvature of the underside of that bronze case. The bronze itself is relatively standard, and obviously with bronze you can't generally have too many changes or complexity in surfaces, because the patina then overtakes anything you do to the particular case itself. This one has that nice curvature. It's relatively simple, but there is an undercut to it and a chamfer on top of the lugs as well, which gives it a little bit of interesting shape, possibly also leading to also helping fitting onto the wrist the way that it does. But with the patina then coming in, you then get that interesting aging process of the bronze case. And that is obviously then also reflected on the outside coin edge of that bezel, which fits and translates nicely from bezel down to case. Now that lume filled screw down crown is not guarded, but of course it is screwed down because this one has that 200 meters of water resistance, but it also has that nice 9000 series Miyota movement, which is turning out to be one of my favorite movements. But of course, being one of these Miyotas, they come standard with hand winding as well as hacking. I think the straps that he's chosen to pair with these watches really suit the color variations between them, the lighter brown on the brown dial variation and the darker, almost like a dark blue on the blue dial variation. What's interesting is those little stitched sections just nearby the case. One is normal, two is a little bit different, so that gives you a little bit of added interest to the strap itself. But what I can say about it is a super soft strap, very, very comfortable to put on wrist. Certainly not something that I'd be looking to change out if I had one of these watches in my collection. And what is very nice, and what I would hope from a micro brand especially, is that the hardware matches the case of this watch. So having that bronze case, bronze markers, which is really quite pleasant to see. Now these watches have just been lent to me, so I do unfortunately have to send them back, but I have been getting as much on-wrist time with them as I can whilst I've had them because I've really wanted to understand them, but also I've just been really enjoying them. And there's been a few things that have stood out to me and surprised me since I've been wearing these watches. Firstly, it is the fact that I prefer the blue dial variation. I did not expect that. I thought I'd be drawn directly to the brown with the brown bezel insert because it seems to fit in and blend in with the bronze case, with the brown strap. But it is the blue. The blue just has something about it that works nicely with the bronze case, and that came as a surprise to me. The legibility was definitely a big surprise to me, but I knew the lume would be good because this brand is known well for their lume, but I didn't expect the at-a-glance legibility to be so good because of that complexity of the dial. And then I love that it then just fits nicely on my wrist. I love that the case design, albeit relatively simple, has the elements to it that allow it to fit nicely on wrist. And yes, that mother of pearl bezel insert was a surprise to me. It surprised me that I like it as much as I do, and it also surprised me that it is more subtle than I actually expected. Previous experiences with mother of pearls have sometimes shown it to be a little bit too shiny or perhaps too much of a feature, but in this case, it is a subtle feature which helps elevate the watch versus taking away from it. The only thing that I've come across on this watch that I would perhaps consider changing if I had the opportunity to do so, and I'm actually not entirely sure if it would actually benefit from this change, is I think I would like to see the hands, those silver brushed hands, being also in a bronze color. Perhaps then they may disappear a little bit too much from the dial, and perhaps that's why that choice was taken. But it'd be nice to see what that would have looked like to see the hands matching with the case. Thank you so much to Signum for letting me get some hands-on experience with these watches. It has been fantastic to have them in my collection for this short time. And thank you so much for watching. There's a few more videos that relate to watches if you'd like to watch them next.